In today's Hiwatt soundbite, we're having a creative look at the incredible noise gate. Well, I am very excited about today's session. We're talking about noise gates. And just like the title suggests, they are an incredible tool. I mean, just the sheer number of uses and techniques that you can apply to a noise gate, it creates an unlimited number of possibilities. From early on in my career, when I first started to mess with noise gates, I knew that they would be a very important tool moving forward. But the real discovery for me came when I understood that you could control that noise gate externally through that key input. Oh my goodness, that changed everything. You know, I don't know if we have a more effective tool in our production arsenal than an externally keyed gate. Unbelievable. So let's jump right into a session and start sharing some ideas on effective use of noise gates with the absolute focus put on how to be creative with them. So in preparation for today's session, I came down to the studio last night. I started with a blank page. I went and found some acoustic drums, recorded drums that I could import to that session so I'd have some source material to work on. Well, that quickly turned into a whole bunch of chaos by me gating everything but the kitchen sink. Before I get that far, let's break it down. Let's have a quick listen to these drums dry with no rooms and no gates in place. Just the drum sound. Check it. All right, a clean drum sound, tight, honestly a little boring, right? So fortunately, this drum recording includes 3 really good room sounds. 2 of them were recorded in mono, and 1 of them was recorded in stereo. Let's just have a listen to all 3. Here's the stereo one first. And one of the monos. And the other mono. Okay. Notice how radically different they all sound. That is the sign of a fantastic recording engineer. Somebody who is thinking ahead and capturing sounds in the room of a drum recording like that that are going to be extremely useful in the mix. When I'm going for an acoustic kit like this, I'm going to want something on my kick drum, I'm going to want something on my snare, and I'm going to want something on my toms. Now, sometimes that's a combination and shared thing, but you know, in a case like this where I've got such distinct different room mics to work with, I'll probably dedicate each one of those rooms to a different thing. You know, I immediately gravitated towards this for the kick drum. You know, I added some more effects on it, and suddenly you have this amazing gated kick drum sound. Now that's a funky sound all by itself, but you layer that under the kick drum, wow, it's a really cool tone. And for the snare, I'd choose to use something much more aggressive like this mono track. Now that sound just has snare written all over it. So go ahead and put a gate on it and then key that gate with the snare drum, and what are we left with? And that big, beautiful stereo room sound, I'll typically reserve that for the big tom fills and my snare. So I'll put a gate on that big stereo room and I'll key it with my toms and my top snare mic. So check this out. Okay, so all 3 of those together, soloed, sound like this. So I'll unsolo those, and now let's have a listen to our drum kit with all of these rooms in place. Wow. What a difference that makes to the drum sound. I'll play dry, and then I'll add the kick room, the snare room, and then the stereo room in order. So there's a very simple and effective way to use gates and key those gates to open up room mics for our drums. Well, you know, There's so many other uses, and this is where it just gets fun with noise gates. There's just about no limit to what you can do with these things. You know, and like in Pro Tools, there's a signal generator plugin. Well, that has a pink noise generator. Well, pink noise can be an excellent source for your snare sound in your mix. Now, pink noise by itself, what does it sound like? Let's have a listen. Now that's a pretty nasty pink noise signal all by itself, but you put a gate on that pink noise, key it with the snare drum, and then shape the decay based on what it is that you're trying to achieve, you will be blown away. So here's pink noise being triggered by the snare. So it's just opening on the snare drum. Let's go ahead and play my drums with my noise in. I'll let 2 snare hits go by with the noise on, and then I'll mute it, and I'll switch back and forth so you can hear the difference. So you see, it's not like massively a big deal. It's just that that noise can bring a real sense of air or sort of kind of like stick hitting that drum. Now for the kick drum, this kick sample that I'm using in this track has quite a bit of low end already, but quite often what I'll do is I'll draw up an oscillator and I'll tune that oscillator to the track. I'll tune it to the original kick that's on. And then I'll go ahead and set a gate up on that oscillator and I'll key it with the kick drum. And the same thing as the snare, I'll adjust the decay to match the effect that I'm going after. But this can be a really effective way to add some real beautiful sub-harmonic to your kick drum. On some systems, you may not even be able to hear this because it's so sub. It's like 30 something hertz, right? But check it out all by itself. In the big studio, you can hear what I'm talking about. There's like a 30 hertz tone that's like, very effective on the kick drum. So here's all my drums with noise, sub, and rooms on. Now check it. The simple fact that we can insert that gate on just about anything and then externally key it with something different can be so effective. I mean, this is just a simple example of gated strings. Very easy to do and very, very effective. It's a really, really cool effect, and what I've always loved about that gated string effect is that inside that gate, of course, you've got a range control. It's a beautiful effect because with that range knob on our gate, we can just have as much of the gated effect as we want or as little of it. So I hope this inspires you to think outside the box a little bit when working with noise gates. There are always going to be that intended use that we go and reach for a noise gate and put it on, say, a tom or something. But there's so many cool things you can experiment with. So dive in with both feet and get creative by externally keying your gates. Well, thank you very much for sitting in on today's session. And if you feel this session has value, please consider subscribing to my channel. And by all means, go ahead and share this session with a friend or colleague.